Album of the Week, episode 64. Hey guys, this week we're taking a look at Miles Davis, Porgy and Bess. This is an excellent album. I love this album. Now this is a compilation album, not a compilation, but a collaboration album, I should say, with Miles Davis and Gil Evans. Gil Evans is one of the greatest jazz arrangers who has ever lived. He is amazing. I love him, especially for his use of different kinds of instruments. He's known for using instruments that you wouldn't normally hear in jazz, French horn, any of like the bass clarinet, stuff like that. That's not like standard trumpet, trombone, saxophone, rhythm section. So love that. This is one of 4 collaborations between Miles Davis and Gil Evans, and I've done reviews of actually the 3 other albums. I have them all up and reviewed, but the first one was in 1957, Miles Ahead. I think it's 1957. The second one is this one that I'm going to review right now, Porgy and Bess, Sketches of Spain is the third. And then finally, there's Quiet Nights, which wasn't fantastic. Wouldn't really recommend that one necessarily. But my personal favorite of the 4 is actually this one, Porgy and Bess. That's why I saved it for last. If I had to rate them, I would go Porgy and Bess, Miles Ahead, Sketches of Spain, Quiet Nights. That's how I would personally do it. So this album was recorded in 1958, so not too much longer after Miles Ahead, and it is amazing. So much cool history within this. So Porgy and Bess isn't original Miles Davis music, so I was doing research and I knew it was originally from George Gershwin. When I did a little more research, I realized George Gershwin stole it. He didn't steal it, but he adapted his opera from a play called Porgy, which I didn't know about. It's a play by Dorothy Hayward and DuBose Hayward, which was actually also adapted from the short novel by DuBose Hayward. So this is not Miles Davis at all. And the novel is also called Porgy. So originally it was a novel. Then it was adapted to a play, and the play tells the story of Porgy, and all this information is just from Wikipedia, so keep everything I say with a grain of salt. But the play tells the story of Porgy, a disabled black beggar who lives in the slums of Charleston, South Carolina. It relates his efforts to rescue Bess, the woman he loves from Crown, her violent and possessive lover, and a drug dealer called Sporting Life. So that's the basis of the story behind Porgy and Bess. It was later adapted by George Gershwin, one of the greatest American composers who's ever lived. And that's a Broadway opera that he changed it to. Probably the most famous one, piece that came out of that is Summertime, which is featured on Miles Davis' Porgy and Bess, which was adapted again by Gil Evans for all these jazz arrangements. This is an excellent album. Let me just read down the tracks on here. We've got Buzzard Song, Bess, You Is My Woman Now, Gone, love that one, Gone, Gone, Gone. 5 is Summertime. That's one of my all-time favorite tunes. It'll always hold a special place in my heart. It was one of the first tunes that I transcribed the tune, but not the solo, the tune of the song. I love that. Summertime is great. Next track is Oh Bess, Oh Where's My Bess, Prayer, Fisherman Strawberry, and Devil Crab. My Man's Gone Now, It Ain't Necessarily So, another great one. Here Come the Honey Man, I Loves You Porgy. There's a Boat That's Leaving Soon for New York, I Loves You Porgy, take 1, second version, and Gone, take 4. So they have near full versions of these takes, which is so cool. And those two were not on the original LP, I should say, too. But I was reading about it a little bit, in here, and they would record full takes even if they weren't super happy with it, just because they knew they were going to have bonus tracks apparently. And I forget which one it is off the top of my head, but it's one of those two backing tracks doesn't have the opening tune, the melody of the tune at the beginning, which is interesting. It just hops straight into a solo. So I can't remember off the top of my head. You'll have to listen to find out. This is on Spotify too. If you're interested, that'll be linked below. So I wanted to read a Miles Davis quote here that I found. When Gil wrote the arrangement of I Loves You Porgy, he only wrote a scale for me, no chords. Gives you a lot more freedom and space to hear things, but there will be fewer chords but infinite possibilities as to what to do with them. Classical composers have been writing this way for years, but jazz musicians seldom. Miles Davis was huge in the, very instrumental in changing jazz as it went throughout. He's one of the few musicians who you can't really say Miles was this player, Miles was this, because he has such a long span. But Miles was hugely influential in the modal jazz movement, which means, you know, you take one scale, if we want to, let's say Dorian. I don't normally play on these. I'm a trumpet player if you're just finding this, but... So that's a Dorian scale. And it would be a whole piece just based on the Dorian scale. And then it would move to Phrygian or all these different modes. So it's so cool that this was one of those first albums with full jazz arrangements. It's just such a great album. And just a little bit more on that, I'll read the conception for this. In 1958, Davis was one of many jazz musicians growing dissatisfied with bebop, seeing its increasingly complex chord changes as hindering creativity. So there's so much going on that you can't really make it your own. There's only a certain number of choices, and the way the chords all flow together. Charlie Parker is a great example of bebop. I love bebop, but anyways, getting back to it, 5 years earlier in 1953, pianist George Russell published his Lydian chromatic concept of tonal organization, which offered an alternative to the practice of improvisation based on chords. Abandoning the traditional major and minor key relationships of classical music, Russell developed a new formulation using scales, or series of scales, for improvisations. His approach to improvisation became known as modal in jazz. Davis saw Russell's method of composition as a means of getting away from the dense chord-laden composition of his time, which Davis had labeled thick. Modal composition, which with its reliance on scales and modes, represented, as Davis put it, a return to melody. So there's Miles Davis's take on modal jazz. I love modal jazz most of the time. I'll be honest, sometimes it can get a little too out there. Not out there as in like weird, I don't mean necessarily. I mean out there as in it's too free. But maybe that's just my personal bias based on jazz. I love learning chord changes and stuff too. And I should also say I'm not a jazz expert. I have a minor in jazz studies for my undergraduate degree. I'm more of a classical trumpet player actually. But I love jazz, and Miles Davis is a huge influence of mine. And I wanted to give respect by making this little video about Miles Davis, Porgy and Bess. Listen to Summertime, for sure. Listen to Gone, for sure. Listen to I Loves You Porgy, for sure. Listen to all of these, for sure. This is great. Check out Miles Ahead as well if you're looking for, especially if you're interested in learning more about jazz arranging. It doesn't get much better than Gil Evans. He is one of the greatest of all time. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this week's Album of the Week. Links below will be where you can purchase that, as well as a Spotify link. Next week, we're taking a look at the Brandenburg Concertos by Bach. I'm really excited to get into this. I've cheated. I've already listened to half of it. But this is Swiss Baroque soloist Nicholas Eklund, one of the best trumpet players. I listened to his. I already listened to Brandenburg 2. You know, the crazy trumpet part. Oh my lord, it's amazing. The best version of that I've ever heard. I'll get more into that next week. But we've got Stefano Reti on transverse flute and Andres Gabetta as the director, violin, and violino piccolo. I don't know if those other two, I'll talk more about that next week, but looking forward to checking that out. I'll link this below where you can purchase this as well. So that's everything that I had to say. Check this album out. It's fantastic. It's so good. I'm a little sad that this is the last one of the Miles Davis and Gil Evans collaborations that I have, but it is what it is. So I'll be doing other Miles CDs, I'm sure of that. But anyways, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give me a big old thumbs up. Helps me out a ton. Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you never miss another video with me. Comment below if you have any other album suggestions, anything that you think I should check out. And with all of that being said, I will see you next week.